And putting together this event, shared services and consolidation is like the biggest topic right now facing our towns. And there's a lot of fear in sharing services and consolidation, and there's a lot of excitement over the potential for the cost savings to the taxpayers. So it's up to the journalist and citizen journalists to be able to evaluate the pros and cons and communicate to the public, because ultimately whether or not these programs go through is based on public opinion, and that's what the media drives that. And at Princeton, you informed the voters of Princeton of what was happening. And just as the public, we want you to be ambassadors and figure out what's best for your community. It's not necessarily a cookie cutter approach. I guess your panel will tell us if it is. I want to thank Mark for helping me plan this. He came up with the idea for tonight's event and really shaped it. And he has a great online tool called townstats.org, which Mike in the back developed. It's an online news site where you can actually go and plug in your town. It'll bring up the budget of it, and then you can bring up one or two other towns and compare your budget. So you could see, we used actually the press conference when we launched it as a demo. We showed Princeton Borough, Princeton Township, and then a third municipality that was of the same size.
Ridgewood.
And we were able to show that the Princetons combined were spending double on police than a similarly sized town, Ridgewood, as the two boroughs combined. So it's a really illuminating tool. As you're listening to these discussions, you can go back when you go home tonight, go to townstats.org and pull up your town and start seeing how do other towns spend their money.
Like how they compare, like actually you can also rank on like any of numerous categories, all 566 municipalities in the state. And soon you'll be able to rank only 565, which will represent amazing progress. So we'll talk about that when we get to Princeton.
That website is towns.org.
It's called Townstats, www.townstats.org. And we just got the Alexandria, we're just about to put the Alexandria budget up in the next week or so.
You haven't approved it yet.
We have the 2010 up, we don't have the 2011 up, but the 2011 I just saw coming in, so.
Good.
Anyway.
Thank you.
It's scary to actually know what is up and what is not. That's really bad. We're going to open this up to questions fairly soon, but I want to provide an overview, and then I want to ask Mayor Gerner and Gina Genovese to talk about consolidation, which is it is amazing. It is truly amazing that the Princetons actually are emerging. The last merger was Vineland and Landis. The last merger of any size that involved more than 9 people in the town that was merging was Landis and Vineland in the 50s. Looking at what has been going on in shared services and in municipal consolidation over the last decade. If you thought about shared services in the 1990s, early in this decade, what was talked about was sharing animal control officers or sharing building inspectors. No one was looking at really sharing core services. What has occurred now as a result of a combination of factors is that municipalities are really looking at sharing core services, and there's a tremendous movement to consolidate municipalities that is just getting underway. I interviewed Alan Karcher back in 1998. Right before he died. And Alan Karcher, who lived in Princeton Borough at the time, had just written a book called Multiple Municipal Madness that talked about New Jersey's 566 municipalities, how this was not the way any other state governed themselves, how the how all these municipalities broke apart and are fragmented. Went around the country, other municipalities and governments were regionalizing and emerging. Alan didn't really think that this would occur. He didn't think we would ever get to this stage where municipalities actually combined. But what has been occurring is that there's been a combination of factors. First of all, over a period of years, state aid to municipalities has been held flat. Flatter has been cut. While school aid has risen, while state spending has risen, aid to municipalities has really been cut back. We now have a 2% property tax cap, a 2% cap on spending, which will be very hard for municipalities to maintain services with a 2% cap without being creative about assessing how they offer those services. If you look at what's going on today, no one 5 years ago would have been talking about consolidating police departments on a large scale regional or county basis. But let's look at where we are right now. Camden County is looking at consolidating their police forces into a single force. Governor Christie and a Senate President Sweeney have both gotten behind this on a bipartisan basis. Somerset County is in the final stages of a consolidation study in which they're looking at consolidating all of the police forces in the county into 5 regional forces, which basically are logical and mirror regional school districts for the most part. Hunterdon County is talking about whether or not they should consolidate all of their school districts into a single countywide district, or failing that, if all of the K through 8 districts ought to consolidate into K through 12 regional districts. The Bergen County Sheriff has issued grants to towns to study consolidation of police forces. 16 towns applied for and received grants. This is a fact that towns are really looking at consolidating services at that level on core services such as policing is a tremendous advance. The fact that the Princeton's actually voted to merge, we'll hear from Mayor Gerner and from Gina on what's going on around the state in terms of municipal consolidation efforts. Scotch Plains and Fanwood are looking at it. Merchantville's citizens have talked to Cherry Hill. There's a lot going on in that regard. But again, there are a lot of barriers to consolidation that the legislature has introduced bills to make it easier for municipalities and school districts to consolidate. I thought that we would start out tonight by asking Assemblyman Chivukula to talk about the initiatives that are underway in the legislature to start.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Mark, for inviting me today. And what a difference it makes after a few years. When I was in the Franklin Township Council, when you talk about consolidation and shared services, I'm going back to 1997 to 2005. Everybody will laugh at you, and people are. And when I got into the legislature in 2002, when you talk about, oh my God, those mayors are going to come after you like with a baseball bat. People are afraid to talk about consolidation. I did serve as mayor for a short time in Franklin Township, and I looked at it, and when I wanted the Franklin Township Library to work with Franklin Township and the school board, it was so difficult for them to come together, apply for a grant, let alone share the services. And things have changed over a period of time. And one reason could be that people have realized that we cannot continue to do business the way we have been doing. Resources are shrinking, and there's tremendous burden on the people and the taxpayers in particular. And how do you do that? And also the global economic recession has brought about a lot of awakening. Even the people who are don't want any kind of consolidation, they're talking about it. I mean, there are many people still would fight it. When we had a joint legislative session under Governor Corzine, and we had both the houses, the Senate and the Assembly got together and started discussing this particular issue. Some people from some towns, they came and they hounded the legislators saying that not in my town, we are willing to pay as much taxes as needed, but we have our school system that we want to protect it. And the bottom line is that when you try to bring the school system together, naturally you are going to touch a very touchy issue. That if you are from Highland Park, would you want to merge your school district with New Brunswick, or for that matter Edison? Because there are a lot of issues that are nobody wants to talk about. It is about the minorities, people coming from poorer families and economic disadvantaged families. So it is a very, very difficult topic. And but over a period of time, there were, under Governor Whitman's, there were a lot of incentives, grants were provided for municipalities for doing shared services. And some municipalities have used it to some extent. A lot of the municipalities have not used that. And of course, Gina Genovese came with her movement after some time. And but Franklin Township in Somerset County, we have a fantastic opportunity with the Somerset County. They had the Somerset County business partnership. They came together and said, look, it does not make sense to continue the way we are doing business. Let's try to make use of economies of scale and try to see how we can eliminate redundancy and duplication. And they started doing that. And Somerset County Business Partnership is one of the leaders in terms of shared services. The Middlesex County, for that matter, when they were trying to purchase salt. This year we don't want to talk about salt because we don't have much snow. But many years, and a lot of the mayors, the mayor could talk about it, sometimes the budget of the township could be $1 million in snow removal and the snow and salt and all those issues. So they were trying to take those type of things which are really does not touch the people near and dear who have those issues. Because when you talk about schools, people say, oh no. When you talk about municipalities, oh no, we are a home rule state and we like to make our own rules. We don't want Trenton to come and tell us. But the interesting thing is that if you want to put a street light or you want to put a stop sign, still the New Jersey Department of Transportation, you have to go there, you have to get the approvals. I don't know what the home rule they're talking about. and then you talk about energy tax, for example. You have monies are collected from the energy companies, and the governor takes that and balances the budget. So this has been going on, the legislature, so I think we are given that false feeling that we have home rule, and yes, you can have your own police department. If you look at some of the municipalities, one municipality, part of my district is 1.2 square miles. Another municipality is 1.8 square miles. I don't have that town anymore. But what I'm saying that each municipality has a police department, police chief, the public works department, engineering department, planning department, zoning department. When you add all these things, as Mark said, there are 566 municipalities. When you multiply, it gets out of control. And how do you bring that? I mean, that's one of the major challenges. And these ideas, some of the Senator Bob Smith, who is my senator, has put out some ideas about county-based school districts. Administrative school districts. Basically what it is, instead of having each municipality, for example, Somerset County has 21 municipalities. Instead of having 21 school boards, have one school board at the county level and appointed by the board of chosen freeholders, and then try to take all the functions. For example, if you have information technology function or a transportation function or a public works function, why do you need to do it 21 times? Why can't you come together for the municipality? But the school boards, where you have, we have one of the major costs is that you have 600 school districts. And when you have 600 school districts, how do you find 600 excellent superintendents? It's not possible, because so what happens is that, and then you have it's a market driven, and so the salaries are given, the benefits are given. We read about that last few years, and one of the things Office of Legislative Services came up with this study and said, look, if by consolidating a lot of these functions, you can save about $700 million. And that was a few years ago. It's not even the current number. And so people say, no, there is no savings. If you go to the New Jersey Education Association or you go to the Superintendent's Association, no, you're going to lose the quality of education. No, this is a holy thing. You don't touch this thing. And they've been saying that. So we have to figure out that other states have county-based school districts, and we are not even talking about county-based school districts. We are talking about administrative functions, whether it's information technology, transportation, public works. And so I had to put in a bill along with Senator Smith in the Senate, and the bill did not go anywhere because the governor is not showing much interest, and the leadership promised me that they're going to post the bill last session. The session came and went. 2 years went by. They have not posted it. In the meantime, other ideas have emerged. We try to cap the salary of the superintendents and all, but nobody, including the current governor, has really taken this issue head on, because it's politically, we are all we're political animals. We are worried about how can we get re-elected next year, because we have elections every 2 years. And the governors are the same thing. They want to get one more election in, and then they want to create their legacy. Nobody cares about average citizens. I think that's where they lack the courage. We talk about all this leadership. We can do a lot of press releases, we can talk about all these things, but we have not really shown the courage and say, can we afford, in the 21st century, when technology is available, can we afford 566 police departments, 500, some of these towns, one town was just a golf course. Some people who take care of the golf course are the citizens of that township. Mm-hmm. And there is one township which is only airport, and people who work for the airport are the residents of the township. So why do we have to do that? Maybe a couple of 100 years ago, the farmers and the taxation was not like that. And one of the things you look at current situation, the healthcare premiums. If you look as the mayor, there's always double-digit increases. Can we afford that? And then you talk about negotiated contracts with the unions and the benefits, the pensions, and then you talk about sick leave payouts, and all these things. It's very, very difficult to continue. I think that's a sad thing. It's just then people say, "Hey, you are a legislator. We elected you. Why can't you do it?" One person cannot do it. The governor, has the power. He's got $31 billion budget, so he can get some things done. The leadership, they can move something. But a single legislator, we can talk about it. We can put all the bills I want. It make me feel good, but I cannot get that thing done. And I just want to touch on one more thing. Is the Senator Sweeney has put in a bill, which is number is S2, number 2, and basically it creates the Local Unit Alignment, Reorganization, and Consolidation Commission. It looks very long name to me. It's very scary. And when you create a commission like that, you wait for the governor to make the appointments. We have lots of commissions. They still have no appointments have been made. So but it examines the consolidation of the municipalities, the merger of autonomous agencies, and sharing of services between municipalities or between municipalities and other public entities. Now, what is one of the key characteristic of this bill is that municipalities affected by these proposals, the voters will vote on this their acceptance, and if the voters reject the plan, the state will punish them by reducing the amount of aid it provides the municipality and by the amount of expected savings. Now, how do you come up with the expected savings? And these are all people can argue and question that. I think it eliminates the civil service agreements, and all those things will be eliminated. Depending on where you are on the issue of civil service, it's basically telling the municipality how to do this thing. I think it was done effectively. If I remember, the governor of North Carolina did it many years ago. Mm-hmm. What he did was he had given all the municipalities aid money and made them dependent on the state aid 100%. And then 2 years later, he said, "You consolidate, or I won't give you any aid." So, this goes along a similar thing, but it is difficult when you have a League of Municipalities who is lobbying for all the municipalities. They're knocking on doors and lobbying. And legislators, if you look at some of the legislators who are not only legislators, they're also mayors, and they used to be mayors, or they are mayors. And there's different kinds of pressure come from different places. And first of all, the bill may not get posted. For example, the bill I introduced, Senator Smith introduced, it's been there for years, and they don't post it. And I can feel good about it, but if it doesn't get posted, there's no opportunity for us to have that discussion. Having said that, I want to end on a positive note that people are realizing, and people like yourselves, this is the participative democracy, and if you don't ask for accountability and leave it to somebody else, that somebody else is not going to be there. And they may not be looking for your interest, they may be looking for their self-interest. So I think this type of movements and trying to educate the people and explain why we need to do things differently than we have been doing for the last couple of 100 years, I think that's very important. And so maybe other speakers will highlight some of those advantages.
Great. We'll take questions for the panel at the end of the session, if that's okay. Speaking of, I were talking earlier about courage, political courage. The Princeton's, I believe, 3 times before had turned down consolidation votes, usually in the, and I think it failed each time in the borough.
Correct.
Correct?
Yep.
And you're the mayor of the borough.
Mayor of the township.
You're the mayor of the township.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I should have gotten the mayor of the borough in here to hear how that going through.
No, you shouldn't.
Not quite. Not quite. I won't hear about. Okay. I would like to. Could you talk about how this consolidation in Princeton finally went through,
mm-hmm.
and from what I heard earlier, you've just be a gun now. You now have like all the knotty problems of consolidation
mm-hmm.
moving forward.
Yep.
First of all, why did it pass this time as opposed to when it passed? What did it take to get it through? And then what's involved in this?
It's so easy, even a caveman can do it. Now, when I
don't think we have any of those. Go ahead.
I kind of feel like one right now with this beard contest that
Okay.
I'm doing for. We started this whole discussion really back in 2006. I ran for office basically on a platform of consolidation, and when I ran, I went back to our library and I looked at all the previous Consolidation Commission reports. And the Princetons have studied consolidation so many times. The 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. The last Consolidation Commission referendum was in 1996, and it was voted down in Princeton Borough. Mm-hmm. In 1978, there was another vote, and it failed in the borough by only 33 votes. So I went back and I looked at each commission's report and specifically why it failed. And we had some citizens that were so passionate about this that they actually put books together of press clippings, of letters to the editor and advertisements. In 1996, when the commission was formed and it went to a referendum, there were campaigns set up on both sides of the issue. And the people that were against it actually had ads in the newspaper with pictures of Saddam Hussein, Napoleon, and Hitler. And the title of the ad would say, "Look what happened when they tried to consolidate." So I mean, we had very passionate individuals on both sides of this issue. And one of the things that I took away from the failed efforts was that, under the previous Municipal Consolidation Act, basically the commissions were structured only with citizen representatives. And that was an issue for us, because what ends up happening is if you don't have any type of integration or communication with elected officials, it's very easy for the elected officials to undermine the process or not get on board with the process if they're not brought on board along every step of the way. So what happened in 2007 was helpful for the effort, because in 2007 there was an act that was passed called the Local Option Municipal Consolidation Act. And that act actually rose out of the last failed effort in the Princetons. And what it does is it allows for more flexible creation of consolidation study commissions. It also allows for apportionment of debt between the two municipalities. And it also has another provision for something called advisory planning districts that help preserve neighborhood character potentially, which is one of those emotional issues that enters into the consolidation debate. And so what we ended up doing is we put together a proposal to create a consolidation and shared services study commission. And the commission was to be comprised of 2 elected officials from each municipality and 4 citizen representatives from each municipality. So that way we had both citizens and elected officials represented, and we also brought in an independent consultant, because we felt that in order to be able to present this to voters in any type of referendum, whether we were ultimately going to recommend consolidation or not, we needed to have independent, objective financial data. And we couldn't let that be hijacked in any way by any type of emotions or any type of representative interests on either side of the municipal lines. So we brought in an independent consultant, and we basically did a study that lasted about 6 months. And we went through every single department in the borough and the township, and we ended up recommending consolidation. Last year, it was placed on the ballot, and it passed convincingly in both municipalities. The estimated savings that came out of this was about $3.2 million on an annual basis, which represents about 6% of our municipal budgets. And that's very significant, because over the last 6 years, as I've been on township committee, we have reduced our staff by 18%. And that's what's happening all around the state. With the 2% cap, we are in a situation where all municipalities are either spending down their surplus or they're cutting back on services and reducing staff. Those are essentially your 2 options. So the real question is that where do you want to be 5 or 10 years from now as a community? And do you think you're going to be in a situation staying in the status quo that's going to be better than a potential consolidation? And the way that we approached it was that we currently share 13 shared services between the borough and the township. The only things that were outstanding were police and public works. And after going through this process and serving on the governing body, I can tell you that shared services, if you share one thing, that may be okay. But if you're sharing more than one shared service, it is cumbersome, and it has the potential to also create conflict between the 2 municipalities. The Assemblyman was talking very correctly about how issues become politicized when it comes to either consolidation or shared services, and we've seen it all the time. It is tough to have the courage as a political official to move forward and say, you know what, we need to think differently. We can't keep doing things the same way. But it's always easy to sit back and blame the other municipality or point a finger, because inherently that's your protection as a political official, and that needs to end. And one of the ways that ends is by building trust between those 2 municipalities, and that's what we really tried to do is rekindle our dialogue and begin to generate some trust between the 2 municipalities, so that we could then move forward with a study commission like this. But one of the things that arose out of this act in 2007 that I think is an opportunity for other towns is that the consolidation study process can be initiated by citizens. And it doesn't have to rely solely on elected officials. And I say that because in some cases, you may not be able to get your elected officials on board with this. And sometimes it has to come out of the citizenry. And I think that, it obviously in an ideal situation, it's great to have an integrated citizenry working with some interested elected officials to get this effort moving. But in some cases, you may have to start it yourself. And I think that's one of the powerful things that we have with this new act that actually can get things started. And I'm supportive of it, and I hope that we continue to see other efforts. And I worked myself out of a job going through consolidation as it passed. So I look forward to ending this year, hopefully with a template that can be replicated in other communities. And I will, gladly offer my services and my time to any community that's interested. And I've been very much happy to be part of working with Gina at Courage to Connect and Jay, and they do a tremendous job. I saw their presentation the other day, and it was very compelling, and I am very proud of the work that you're doing, too.
Thank you.
Great introduction, Gina.
Well,
I cannot top that.
Well, I guess I'll compliment him back. He's my hero. Mayor Gorner is my hero. Our organization is Courage to Connect New Jersey, and I'm the executive director and co-founder. And for 2 years, the naysayers would say, consolidation has never happened in New Jersey, and it's never going to happen. So I have to thank Mayor Gorner because I haven't heard that since November 11th this year. I'm a former elected official myself. I served as mayor of Long Hill Township, which is in Morris County. And when you're an elected official in New Jersey, the number one question you get is, what are you going to do about my property taxes? Every day, multiple times. And you start looking into it, and you start to see the duplication. You start to see that in my town was 8,700 people, is the population of Long Hill Township. You start to see that 3,100 households had to pay for the burden of a police department, of a DPW, of an administration, and you start to see that maybe the efficiencies aren't there. And that's what I first looked into. In 2006, Governor Corzine had $1 million challenge that if you merged police departments, that you would get $1 million. And so I looked at this carrot and I said, wow, this is amazing. I could bring $1 million to my community. So I went around and I started to talk to surrounding mayors. And at the time in 2006, and again, that was like a lifetime ago, I got slammed. I mean, mayors were not interested in speaking to me about this. In fact, they told me, I don't even want to talk to you about it. Don't tell anyone you were in here talking about it. And all I was doing was talking about it. I said, wow, there's this $1 million challenge. Maybe we could look into it. And I started to see that perhaps elected officials in this state were not going to really consider consolidation. And it was at that point that I saw the 2007 law that Mayor Gorner was talking about. And I looked at this law, and it gave the people the same power and rights to start a consolidation study in their community. And I looked at the law, and I said to myself, well, who is going to tell the people? Who's going to tell the people that they have this power? Here's this law, but we have to implement it. And so that really was the driving force behind me being a founder of Courage to Connect New Jersey. And what we did is we've written a guidebook. We've actually taken that law, and we have a guidebook that goes through the 6 steps of municipal consolidation. It has a timeline. He came in right at 6 months. Great job. And we are a resource for bringing it to your community. And we've been working with several groups around the state. The Princetons have definitely ignited the consolidation movement. We have a presentation that we go around the state, and we educate the public and elected officials, and we touch those emotional issues. We talk about loss of town identity, because that is huge. And so we highlight Woodbridge Township. Woodbridge Township is the oldest township in the state. It didn't fracture off like a lot of other towns. And so you have a Colonia with its own zip code fire department, its own Colonia Pride Day. They have the banners on the streets. You have Islin. You have Fords. You have Seawarren. And you start to see that there's 10 communities that are one town. They have one school system, one superintendent, one mayor, one police department. And so you start to see that 10 distinct communities can be under the umbrella of one administrative structure, one municipality. The power of the Woodbridge model is that if it did fracture off like the rest of New Jersey, you would see 10 mayors, 10 towns, 10 police departments, and more school districts. And so we use that as a model. We use Ocean Grove, Short Hills, Basking Ridge. Basking Ridge is Bernard's Township. And that's what we do to go around and really address the fear of loss of town identity, because that is huge. We also talk about loss of control, a town's losing its control. But when I was mayor, we had 15 shared services. You start to see that perhaps in 10 years, if we continue down the shared service route, which is absolutely legitimate, is that your town might not be doing anything by itself. So then we start talking about, okay, so what is local control? We're hearing about privatization. We're hearing about outsourcing. And so we say, is this what you want? And then we also address the huge problem of those people. We talk about it. We're all in this together, and if we continue to say, I don't want to be with those people over there, then New Jersey's not going to move forward. And we go around and we address those very, very important emotional issues before it becomes a ballot initiative. And we've had tremendous success. We say, is it essential to have 566 separate municipal structures in New Jersey? And that's the question that we ask. So we've been working now with the 2% cap. We've had about 80 or 100 elected officials reach out to us. Again, they can't do it alone, as Mayor Gorner said. The citizens have to have a seat at the table. Your voice has to be heard at the beginning of this, because this is a huge undertaking. We've had Cherry Hill and Merchantville. The Princetons were the mayor, and the mayor formed the commission. In Cherry Hill and Merchantville, you had the mayor in Cherry Hill working with a citizens group in Merchantville, and now they together have formed a consolidation study commission right now. We have had an exciting time with Scotch Plains and Fanwood. Those are two towns that already had a consolidated school district. Well, the citizens in both towns have now petitioned for a consolidation study. And that's just a quick, interesting example, because the mayors there, they did a shared service study for the police. They did a shared service study for the DPW. They did a shared study report for the libraries. And you start to see that it's not easy. A shared police department, you'd have to have 5 commissioners from each town overseeing the police department. And you still have 2 governing bodies. You have some inequities there because Scotch Plains is 75% bigger than Fanwood at 25%. Then you see that you have a DPW where you have another layer of bureaucracy where you're going to have 5 commissioners from Fanwood and 5 commissioners from Scotch Plains. And you start to see that you're not thinking as one. You start to see that there's inherent difficulties in this. And so if the mayors didn't do it, it's not their fault necessarily. It's just the fact that it's not as easy as you think. It's built in is strife and struggle and competitiveness. And that's the thing that consolidation does. It makes you come together as one. And so the citizens in those 2 towns, they really had the impetus to say, you know what? We've heard we could save $1 million if we do the police. We've heard we can save $500,000. We wanted some of the savings. And so that was their drive to be the first 2 towns in the history of New Jersey to petition the state for a consolidation study. And it's extremely exciting. I really feel we start our presentation with an 1895 New York Times article, an 1895 New York Times article talking about consolidation. Mark spoke about the multiple municipal madness, and we've had commissions since Governor Cahill. But I really do believe that the time has come for New Jersey to address the causes of its highest property taxes in the nation. I really feel that if the citizens, if local elected officials, if the state, and if the governor all work together, I really feel like we can do it right now. And again, I cannot credit the Princetons more and Governor Gorner's leadership on that.
Don't promote me.
I mean, Governor. Oh my God, I am promoting. We are holding a workshop. We are actually holding a workshop at the end of the month. It sounded good, though. We're holding a workshop at the end of the month where we're going to have the elected officials and citizens from Cherry Hill and Merchantville explain how they got together. We're going to have 5 of the Princeton commissioners so you can get a really broad perspective of who did what and actually how they ran their commission and implementation. And so it's a workshop day where hopefully we can get a lot of people together to learn, a lot of elected officials as well as citizens to come together and learn how the process works. So I think it's a very exciting time in New Jersey for consolidation and maybe addressing our problems.
On to the commercial, when and where is that being held?
It's in East Brunswick. I have the agenda here. We also have the acting commissioner, Richard Constable, who is going to come and speak at that event. It's on March 28th at 8 a.m. to noon in East Brunswick. And I have the agenda and I have the location here if you're interested in attending. And hopefully we'll have our 3rd edition guidebook at that point.
Good. One quick note. One of the interesting things about the merchant bill and the Cherry Hill consolidation, if you don't know the towns down there, Cherry Hill is one of the largest suburbs in the state, and Merchant bill I think has about 3,800 residents who had a separate town government with a separate municipal services right next to a town with a population of 75,000, providing very good services. And the citizens are saying, why should we pay for our own government structure when we could just be covered by Cherry Hill? It's not your typical merger of semi-equals or hole in the donut or anything else. It's the citizens of a very small town saying, well, why aren't we a part of that efficient township, efficiently run township? I'd like to open up to questions.
Yes, I'm Linda Carrington from Morristown, and our town is organized under the Faulkner Act, and the surrounding township is not. So how do you reconcile this if you're considering consolidation?
Yes.
When you study consolidation, one of the opportunities that you have if you're going to recommend consolidation is to also recommend the form of government. So whether your town is under the Faulkner Act or not, like for example, Princeton Borough is not under the Faulkner Act, and neither is Princeton Township. We had the opportunity basically to select any of the forms of government that are currently available under the Constitution for us to utilize. You also have the ability to select a special charter. But there's some issues with the special charter because that would have to be approved by the legislature, and the timing and getting that approved before the actual referendum vote may be difficult. But you have the ability to basically reinvent the government form that you'd like to select. You don't have to use your current one. You can basically select any of the ones that are available. And we had a lengthy debate about that in the Princetons, and we ended up opting for the Princeton Borough form of government, which is a directly elected mayor and 6 council members.
Hi, good evening. Right now there's 500, I'm Steve Briscoe. There's 566 municipal governments and 600 school districts. Is there a number you have in your mind where we want to get down to, whether it's 300 or 400? First question. And second question for the mayor is, which police chief won in your town?
Do you want to take that first part?
Yeah,
And then
it's interesting because we're not for forced consolidation. We don't believe that anybody should be forced to do anything, and there should a stick come out and force people to do this, because we feel that on its own merits, it should get people excited. And we do not tell people which towns they should merge with. We feel like that has to be organic. It has to come from the citizenry and where they are. Having said that, we're feeling that about 150, 200 towns would be a really nice number. We want to make sure that if we do consolidate, because it is a tumultuous process, that when you come down to a number, it's a number that's sustainable into the future.
And the second part, we haven't selected a police chief yet. What we're doing is we've put together a transition task force. So we brought in additional citizens, and we have subcommittees set up for each of our departments. And they are meeting with our 2 department heads and basically following the recommendations of the Consolidation Commission. And we will have our organizational structures probably in place by June of this year. So,
I think one of the things is that if you look at your property tax bill, about anywhere from 60% to 80% of your property taxes go towards education. And this is where I think you can get, through consolidation, you can get a better bang for the buck. I think probably, I mean, other states have been successful in having county-based school districts. I think optimal would be 21 if we can get there. But you won't be able to get there from 616 to 21 that easily. Maybe there may be intermediate steps. Maybe you go from 600 to 300 and then work your way down.
I'm Jason Edison. I have a two-part question. One is, I was curious in terms of, you said that existing townships already have shared services. What are like the most common services that you see throughout the state? The reason why I ask that is that the numbers or the examples that were cited, with Princeton Township and the borough, they can absorb it because it's like 75,000 to like 3,000. But what if it's like an evenly matched town where it's 10,000, 10,000 or so? And, they tend to cut services or maybe lay off some employees or, their end of the sort of service is sort of reduced, and that can have an effect on the other townships. Like there's a fear of that.
Well, you can address that, but we've been going around to towns that have been having layoffs or attrition. Attrition is basically a layoff. It means you do not fill the position. So most of the towns that we're going to, their town hall isn't open as much. Their library could have cut hours, and they've already experienced, as Mayor Gorner said, 18% reduction, and that's pretty much all over the state. So if you're going to consolidate and make an organizational structure that works, at least the ones that are going to be working are going to be able to, be secure in their job, make sure that they can have promotions and there's a place to go. It'll be a higher organizational structure. So.
And to build on a little bit what Gina was saying and to address some of your question, what we see and, what I see as I look around the state, as far as you had asked, the common shared services, they're more of the less controversial shared services. As the Assemblyman stated earlier, it's usually like animal control or, things that don't really save a lot of money and aren't that controversial, and then you can go around and say, I share a service. But the reality is the more controversial ones are, police and, public works. And the reason why is because police is your public safety. Public Works delivers a service, and it's a service that makes sure that your roadways are clear, that your brush is picked up, that your leaves are picked up, and that's what residents usually see as kind of the front end of your municipal government. But one of the things that we ended up doing by consolidating is that we are now going to have a single police force that is going to save, just from the police force alone, will save $2.1 million a year. And at the same time, we'll still be able to increase the level of service and deliver our neighborhood policing unit that we actually cut 5 years ago. So, we're actually going to be able to deliver a higher level of service and at the same time save a fairly significant amount of money.
3 years after.
Yes, at full implementation.
And we go around and talk about that too. Woodbridge has an economic development and redevelopment officer. You could have a tourism officer down the shore. So there's many more opportunities to also build and grow employment that's not even there yet in a smaller town.
One of the areas is that county-based library service. I mean, some municipalities have their own libraries, but I think county-based. It also depends on the distances. If you are living in, let's say, Franklin Township, and you want to go to Bridgewater, and you got to, or if you're living further out, and it gets difficult. And also emergency communications, I think, is critical that we have shared services, because you don't want to have a county having their own communication system, individual municipality having a communication system. You want to make sure that you have the similar communication. Also, along the Homeland Security area, you are trying to see your public health. You can consolidate the public health because you want to coordinate preparedness in the case of disaster, man-made or otherwise.
Okay, Neil Coleman. I think one of the things that opponents of the shared services, and I'm a big fan of the shared services, is they'll say it doesn't work. It's a great idea, but it doesn't work. And I think now we have this great opportunity to prove that it does work by putting some numbers on the board. And once people see the numbers, if they're simple enough for them to understand, and there's enough examples of them, people will, the naysayers, they'll be like, oh yeah, you don't want it because it affects you personally, but it actually works. And so then I think the tide would turn. It would be like the tipping point where people would be like, they'd be knocking on your door, as I guess they're already starting to knock on the door, and try to push for this. But now that you have a Princeton before and after, and you have Woodbridge as an example, I guess one of the things that I'm thinking of is you have property taxes per capita You know, in a township that is already there, and the property taxes per capita before and after the consolidation, and property taxes in the town who's your biggest enemy, who doesn't want to consolidate anything. And then if you have that proof, I think people would get on board. And if you don't have the proof, we shouldn't bother having another meeting. So anyway, maybe some of this already exists on town stats or some other place, but as a fairly interested observer, I'm not really sure of good stats to use with other people. So I would love to have those if we...
Yeah, well, I just want to address a couple things. And, I think it's a good question. And, but for those that, the terminology sometimes gets confusing. But there's really two separate things we're talking about here. Shared services are sharing existing municipal services with another municipality, okay? And what we did in Princeton is we shared services for many years, but what we just did is we actually consolidated, and we basically brought together all of our services under one municipal governing body. And that's the key differential. I think that shared services are a good path to go down if you're really not sharing anything currently, and especially the big ones that I was talking about before. But I also think at a certain point you reach that tipping point as a municipality where you're sharing all these different services and it actually becomes cumbersome. I think one of the things about consolidation that you don't hear that often, because everybody talks about consolidation as being a way to save costs and a way to reduce property taxes. That's one aspect of it. But another key aspect of consolidation is it streamlines governance. It creates a proactive, responsive government. And that is important because when you have two separate municipalities sharing one service, it can sometimes be very difficult because you have political officials on both sides of the municipalities pointing fingers at each other if a service isn't working out well. It also creates a more reactive service sometimes because you have to actually have both governing bodies approve various different aspects of that service, including the budgets. So I think that there are times where shared services certainly make sense, and I guess the real point that I want to make is that no, there's not like a one-size-fits-all option here. And I think that everybody needs to look at their own community and decide what's best for it. Sometimes it's going to be a shared service. Sometimes it may be municipal consolidation. But everything should be looked at, and that's really the message that I'd like to get across.
Let's just say a couple things really quickly. Then I'll come over here. One of the easiest things to look at is where towns already share recreation departments, school districts, and so on. Hunterdon County is currently looking at whether or not to consolidate all of their school districts into a single countywide school district. Whether they eventually go down that road or not, they have four or five very strong regional high school districts, and the students all go to North Hunterdon or to Voorhees or to Dell Valley, right? Mm-hmm. And wouldn't it be? There are really good arguments to be made to say all of the K3 districts should just consolidate into the regional high school districts that already exist. You already share football coaches, you share curriculums, but you don't share curriculums. You have different K3 districts sending students to high schools that have different curriculums going in. Consolidation from an educational standpoint can make sense. One other thing in terms of the numbers of school districts, one thing we just did a run up in Morrison, Somerset County on the 55 school districts in Morrison, 55 towns in Morrison, Somerset counties, and we looked at police cost per taxpayer. Okay, and what we found is that for the most part, the towns that had like 18 to 25,000 in population were much more efficient from a cost standpoint than towns of 7,000, 3,000, 5,000, because you can get the economies of scale on your police staffing. Furthermore, they had the detective bureaus with experienced detectives. They actually had better police services than smaller towns that were just scrambling to cover. And so one of the real questions, I know that Gina's used the number 30,000 and 100,000 residents as a logical a number to look at. 30,000, 20,000, certainly a town with 20 to 25,000, a police department that covers a town with 20 to 25,000 residents is going to be much more effective than 4 departments covering a total of 20 to 25,000 residents. And police departments are where the municipal costs are. So if you're looking at shared services and consolidation, you're not willing to look at a consolidation, that is where the dollars are. I'm sorry. Yep.
John Brinkley from Plainfield. I know we've been looking at sharing services between the municipal government and the school board. And I was wanting to follow up on yours in terms of, are there particular criteria that you use in order to determine whether it's better to consolidate with another municipality rather than share services? And how long does the process take place?
That's a good question. And, as I mentioned before in the beginning, when we moved forward with our study commission actually looked at municipal consolidation or shared services for police and or public works. So we looked at a study of how municipal consolidation would affect us and how would it look if we just simply stayed 2 separate municipalities and just shared police and public works. And what we found is that, the police department did save a significant part of that total savings number that I had mentioned. It saved about $2.1 million, and that was significant. But really what moved the commission forward was that there's also an aspect of governance and service delivery that couldn't be achieved by sharing services, and we were able to move forward with a full municipal consolidation recommendation because of that. There were aspects that you're never going to eliminate with a shared service, such as the fact that you're still going to have 2 administrators, you're still going to have 2 zoning departments, you're still going to basically have 2 engineering departments. And when it came to issues surrounding public works, we actually found it to be better if we consolidated to bring together our public works department, because we actually went to our recreation department and found that if we took over their maintenance aspect, we could actually save more there, but recreation was already a shared service. So we found that doing it under municipal consolidation just made a lot more sense for us in terms of the way that we would govern and our service delivery, and the fact that we were also at that point sharing 13 services.
And sometimes with shared services, when we go around, inherent in this, if they had shared the police department, Princeton Township's going to say, well, we have most of the land area in Princeton Borough and the university. And, inherent in that is it could fall apart. And when we go around the state, we have, we were just in Collingswood. Collingswood actually combined with Woodland, the next town, the police departments. They had the names on the police cars. And then 2 years later, it falls apart. We go out to Powhatan. We talk to the mayor of Powhatan. They contract out and they do the police for Alpha, which is a nearby town. And then Alpha comes to them and says, you know what? We want this for less money. And now they're renegotiating the contract and by $100,000 less. So these you're not thinking as one. These are inherent in them, are schisms and strife coming down the road. It's very difficult to maintain that, especially at the higher level. Everybody wants the better deal. And it's sometimes it's very hard to maintain.
Yeah, no, that actually came out of our commission too, because when we looked at just a shared service for the police departments, one of the things that the commission grappled with was what type of governance structure are you going to have on a shared police force? And to my knowledge, there's not a current shared police force that utilizes a joint meeting structure, which is what Gina had talked about in the beginning, where you have this extra level of bureaucracy managing a single police force, and we didn't feel comfortable with that because we already had experience sharing 13 shared services, and we know how politicized it can get, because when things aren't going well in your town because of that service, it's very easy to point fingers, because don't forget, a shared service is always banked in one municipality. So one municipality is basically responsible for the day-to-day operations of that shared service. So if it's not working out well, it's very easy for the governing body and the other municipality to say, oh, those guys don't know what they're doing over there. We need to renegotiate that contract. Then it becomes a political issue, and that's not healthy.
Another question in front before?
Yes, the consolidation of municipalities, the elected officials, you guys consolidate elected officials also?
Yes. Yes. So what'll happen is right now in the township we have a committee form of government, township committee form of government, which is 5 elected officials. And in the borough there's 7 elected officials, 6 council members and 1 mayor. And we will basically be taking those 12 and moving to a single governing body with 1 mayor and 6 council members.
Through election?
Through election, yes.
Township.
And will they all run at?
They're all going to
will they
be.
all run at
They're all
large?
going to run at large.
Okay.
Yep.
So how many board members are you looking to have? 1 mayor, how many elected officials? How many mayors?
Just 1 mayor and 6 elected officials, so 6 council members.
And from the consolidation, how many people you plan to hire, can get hired from all this shared services and consolidation? How many people can you hire? Is anybody being hired or is it going to be all through attrition?
Well, basically what we're looking at now is achieving some reductions through attrition. There may be some layoffs. We're actually talking about that now in our transition task force. But the personnel reductions are really what I was talking about when I talked about the savings number. So that $3.2 million number that I had mentioned, that is all personnel reductions. And I'm optimistic that we'll actually receive a higher degree of savings because one area that the Commission did not even look at, because it was difficult to come to agreement on, was our operating budgets. You know, we will no longer need 2 municipal audits. We won't need 2 municipal attorneys. We won't need all this duplicative equipment that we have. So I think moving forward, we're actually going to recognize, you know, a higher degree of savings than what we initially identified, because what we identified was only personnel savings.
Speaking about personnel savings and the ethical issues that come into this to a certain extent. How do you deal with union issues? How do you deal with personnel issues? Is it possible to do most of this through attrition, or do you need layoffs, or in consolidations, or in a larger scale shared services?
Let me take this and then you. Basically, you know, the way that we're approaching, I think it's going to be unique for each municipality, first of all. But the way that we're actually dealing with it is we actually put together a transition task force, and we have a personnel subcommittee. And what we did there is we have elected officials on the personnel subcommittee. We have both administrators from each municipality on the subcommittee. And then what we did is we also brought in citizens of the township or the borough that have experience in either HR or union contracts, et cetera, to help advise us. And what we will end up doing is most likely coming forward with a plan for how we're going to handle any type of severance or early retirement incentive, and then how we're going to structure each particular department.
Okay. What has been the reaction of the unions within the town to this, or are there union issues? Or
there was some reaction before the vote. You know, so we were actually, you know, what happened is after there was a recommendation to put consolidation on the ballot, then we had, you know, it was full-blown campaign season, and we formed an organization called Unite Princeton, and we had a campaign structure, and we basically went out and marketed consolidation to the community. But at the same time, the unions, my Princeton Township Police Union sent a letter to every township resident advising them to vote against consolidation because they felt that, you know, obviously, you know, the level of service would be reduced, and they were concerned about their jobs and things like that. Consolidation passed in the township by 85%. So, you know, it was we actually had people come to our meetings and express concern about the letter that they received. They were angry that they received a letter from the police advising them to vote against it. And it was an interesting outcome. I was worried about it, particularly at the time, just because I was so invested and focused on consolidation. But it turned out actually seemingly to have backfired.
One of the things about civil service is because even in some shared service instances, if one town has civil service and the other town doesn't, I believe there's only about 180 odd towns in New Jersey that have civil service. But part of the 2007 law is that if a couple of towns, 2 or 3 towns, if one has civil service, then civil service is automatically placed on the ballot. And so the citizens can vote whether they want to opt for civil service or not. And that would be the second question on a ballot of any towns that had civil service moving forward.
Okay. So both towns needed to vote? And
Yes.
Both.
And need to pass in both municipalities.
Nate Johnson. I read the Huntington School Survey, and a couple things came up that I want maybe you guys can clarify some criticism. One is that if a teacher in one school is a history teacher making X thousand, a teacher in another school, same qualifications, same experience, making more money. And supposedly, if they combine, that all the teachers would have to get the higher level rather than they keep it. And the second point is, I guess different communities within Huntington County have different tax depth. Different towns have different depth. You know, if I'm a town has low debt, I don't want to take the town higher, so that you allocate that, or and then you talk about a portion of debt there, so you elaborate a little bit more on that. I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Well, to your first point, the $3.2 million in savings that I spoke about, that includes any leveling up that you had mentioned.
Is that a state law that they
I believe so. Yes. The apportionment of debt in the Local Option Municipal Consolidation Act, there is a provision that allows 2 municipalities that are consolidating to apportion their debts. And what that means is in the past, when Princeton Township and Princeton Borough studied consolidation, if they were going to combine, they would basically have to combine all their debts. And sometimes, as you had pointed out, there's a different debt level per capita in one community versus the other. So what the Local Option Act does is it allows you to apportion your debts, meaning that if you combine into one municipality, for example, Princeton Borough would be responsible for any debt that they incurred before consolidation took place, and Princeton Township the same. Any debt acquired after combining is apportioned among the entire municipality. So that is an option. We actually analyzed that. Happily, what we had found was that the debt levels in the borough and the township, when we mapped them out over a 5-year period of time, were virtually identical on a per capita basis. So we recommended just simply to combine all debts.
And in 2 towns where that might not be so, at least you have this option
You have
that
the
you
option.
can make it equitable.
Yep.
It's important also, not that we're talking about townships here, but it's important to note that we're all in this together. We need to be mindful that 100% of our income tax goes from municipal tax, property tax relief that is built into our Constitution. 0.5% of our sales tax is dedicated to property tax relief. So it's not just your property tax bill. We go around the state, we've presented in 60 communities, and every time we walk in, somebody will say, we have the best school system, we have the best police. And it's wonderful, isn't this great that everybody thinks they have the best? And, you sit there and you're like, great, this is wonderful. You know what, New Jersey, we are great. And we're going to be better together than separate. And it's just wonderful that we have that pride, and that pride can continue even if we are in a consolidated municipality.
Just that the pride can't close our minds.
Yes. Good point. Yeah.
We're talking about consolidation or sharing the services. We're talking about saving money on an organization or a municipality level. Are you guaranteeing the residents no increase in taxes or less taxes?
That's a very good question, and we actually.
What impact does it have on the taxes?
Yeah, are we guaranteeing that we're going to lower our property taxes as a result? Well, we've actually had that question many times as we led up to the vote last year, and every time that question was asked, the way that I would answer it is that we have no ability to guarantee a tax reduction based on a referendum vote for consolidation or shared service. But everybody in the room that is there to learn about consolidation in our community is there to hold us accountable. And if we are not achieving the level of reductions that we have basically put forth as part of the consolidation referendum, then we're not doing our jobs, and we shouldn't be in office. And that's one of the reasons why I chose not to run this year. I wanted to make sure that we took politics out, and that I could make sure that we hand off the new municipality to a new governing body that has some new faces on it, but that understand that basically what we did here is we're going to save $3.2 million, maybe some more each year. As part of a consolidation study report, you have to show the residents what that potential tax impact can be. And that's what we should be doing. We should be meeting that tax impact or exceeding it in terms of a reduction. And if we're not doing that, we're not doing our jobs. And there can be a debate in the community about, adding additional services or bringing on and creating a new department. And if that's ultimately what the citizens want to do, that's fine. But we need to basically create a new baseline. And that's really what we set out to do.
Following up on your question, I'm currently giving this at the Assemblyman. Is there any provision in the new property tax law that would directly affect consolidated municipalities? So, for example, I know that there was something in there that if you did not go up by your 2% in 1 year, you could
go for the referendum.
You could have some additional. You could save it for the following year, right? Can't you rise by 2% a year? And if
you
go
can
up by
bank
1% this year, you can bank it to go up by 3%. Is there would it make sense to would make sense to have some legislative rider on this or something that would affect this? Would this make sense, or should it be something that the state should not be getting involved with attempting to legislate savings from shared services, from consolidation? I don't know, is there...
No, I think if it is, since it's voluntary, two municipalities are coming together and doing this, and they're telling the citizens that there will be, not guaranteeing, but there is, when you bring down the total expenses, naturally the tax rate is going to go down, and then based on the property tax, property values, your taxes should go down. I think that's the logical thing, and I don't know how much legislature can really go down into the nuts and bolts of it. I think it's the process enabling them. The legislature has to enable the municipalities to do certain things, and that's what the law allows for them to do, and how they do it, and it is between the local elected officials and their citizens.
And Mayor Gorner, in your commission report, you had figures on how much people were going to save in the township and the borough.
I think it's important, just following up, they had an outside expert doing the numbers on the, for instance, I think one of the strengths of the Somerset County police consolidation study, which has involved all the police chiefs and police departments throughout the county, is that they did have an outside consultant who was like independently certifying the numbers, so that everyone knew who was saying this consolidation can potentially save $17.8 million. Here is where it is, and it's not on the word of someone from like any of the individual towns, but having outside experts with certifiable numbers, I think is very important. Yeah.
Have all the consolidations been within the same county? Can they be separate counties?
There is a way in the law that you could go out of county, but our feeling is that the first few that hopefully will be successful, that we don't want to touch that law and get that complication. So right now, I would say no, the hurdle's too high. But in a couple of years, I would probably say yes. You can, it's doable. One of the things that I haven't said is how do you do it? I say, okay, you have the power now. So what does that mean? That means you have to get 10% of the last voter turnout election for the General Assembly. And that was this past one in November 2011, which just had the Assembly and the Senate. So it was the lowest voter turnout in the history of New Jersey. And we have 2 years under that window. The next one will be the governor's race, which will elevate it again.
Mhm.
So we're dealing with many, many towns that it's 100, 200 signatures. Just to give you an example, Scotch Plains and Fanwood. Going back to 2009, they needed about 870 signatures in Scotch Plains, and they needed about 293 signatures in Fanwood. After this past election, it went down to 369 signatures in Scotch Plains and 203 in Fanwood. So the bar is very, very low. We're looking at towns, that come to us. It's on 80 signatures, 60 signatures. And all you're doing is asking for a non-threatening study. All you're doing is asking, what is this going to look like, which is just what the Princeton Commission has done. And then the voters decide.
I have a question about the salary and benefits for the elected officials in your town or your municipalities and how you agreed on them. In the town of Morristown, we were paying a lot of health benefits for elected officials and a high salary for the mayor. And the township is different. So how do you reconcile that?
That's a discussion that you'd have to have in your commission. We basically looked at each department, and what we ended up doing is we had a set of options ranging from conservative to aggressive for each department.
Oh, I'm talking about the elected officials.
Yeah, that's essentially a department, right? That's administration. So you have, your administrator.
They determine their own salaries based on the statute, the state statute.
Well, they determine their own salaries based on, an actual, ordinance.
Right.
So basically what can happen is that, inside of that study commission, when you select, you asked before about the form of government. When you select your form of government, that's going to dovetail with a discussion about the salary levels that you want to have. In the Princetons, both governing bodies are part-time, and none offer any type of, benefit structure because they are part-time.
And in Long Hill?
When I became mayor, we eliminated the salaries for council committeemen and women, and we could have accessed medical benefits. I never did, but
Was there a salary for the mayor?
it was a committee form of government, and it was all. I don't even know what it was because I never took the money.
Thank you.
Just following up on a separate note, something I should call it. I do expect the Sweeney bill to pass this year. That it would compel towns to share services where savings could be established under penalty of losing state aid. What do you see as the prospects for that bill, and do you support it individually?
Well, I haven't studied it in detail, so I cannot say that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's definitely. I think the Senator Sweeney he's got enough pull in the Senate to get this bill moving. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the key problems the bill is going to face is civil service. Civil service issues going to, mm-hmm. and the unions and how that's going to be dealt with. That's going mm-hmm. to be the challenge. I'm not sure. I haven't had a conversation with the speaker, Oliver, so we haven't talked about it at all. Mm-hmm. This is just very new, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think I don't know where the League of Municipalities. I don't know.
Has Governor Christie taken any position on it yet, or?
He didn't tell me. He doesn't tell anyone.
You don't have a direct pipeline.
No, even if you have a direct pipeline, he doesn't share. No, his own staff. I think a lot of things are kept very hush-hush.
Yeah, from the Princetons.
Yes, this is all new territory. There's no roadmap for this. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges since
Mm-hmm.
they've always been passed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, essentially, what we're doing is kind of creating a new path. So whenever you create a new path, sometimes you run into rocks or hit a tree or something like that, and you have to take a step back and reroute yourself. And I'm sure that's what we're going to face this year as we go through, because there will be issues that arise that we could not have planned for. There's also issues associated with state statute that we need to work with the Department of Community Affairs on, and sometimes that's a challenge because right now that they are understaffed, they're going through a significant vacuum in terms of some of their very qualified individuals that are retiring. So, Yep. So basically what's happening is that, there are going to be some issues, but I feel confident that as the year goes on, we will basically chart a path that does create a repetitive process for other towns. But it doesn't mean that there's not going to be obstacles, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to be difficult. And Lord knows I don't want to go to another meeting, but I have meetings every single evening, and I can't wait till they end.
Do you feel pressure because I feel like all eyes are on Princeton, and some people want this to fail because they want home rule to stay? I mean, do you feel kind of a burden of responsibility both to the taxpayers and to the watching public? Kind of?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things that's a challenge here is that, I really want to see this be a success. And when we put together the task force, I think that the task force has obviously had, a month or two to get up to speed because they had to basically, understand what had transpired in the previous year with the Consolidation Commission, and it takes a little bit of time for them to get up to speed. And at the same time, it's a balancing act for us as elected officials because we want to move forward and generate the savings that we've identified in the commission report. And we also have to balance, the livelihood of our staff because we also want to be able to retain the staff that aren't identified for reduction. But at the same time, it's challenging because it creates this level of uncertainty at the staff level. And we've had situations already where we know that there's staff that we want to retain that are actually looking for other positions because they're just worried. And so it's a matter of kind of being tactful and sensitive to the existing staff, but also at the same time kind of driving through with what the commission's recommendations are and achieving those savings. And I do have full faith and confidence that we're going to be able to achieve that.
And the difficulties that the mayor is talking about, these are great difficulties. I mean, look at the direction that they're going in, and look at the positive, and look at where they're going to. We go around, and there's difficulties with every local official. They're either running down their surplus, they're wondering about what layoff and how they're going to utilize attrition, what services they're going to cut. So the difficulty in that way is you're going in reverse. In this way, we're moving forward. So,
well, that's really true. I mean, the thing is that it's not like we haven't looked at laying off personnel before. As I mentioned in the beginning, we've laid off 18% of our staff in 5 years, either through attrition or reducing services or what have you. So, the real question is not what happens during this year. And yes, it will be challenging at times, I'm sure. But the thing is once this year is over, we're going to be a single municipality. And I think the real question is going through this process. Do you think you're going to be better off 5-10 years from now than you are currently remaining a separate municipality and staying status quo? And I think, for me, without a doubt, the Princetons will be better as one than being two separate communities.
Let me ask you a real concrete question. You have two directors of public works, two recreation directors. Somebody asked earlier which police chief won.
Mm-hmm.
How are you handling the consolidation of these managers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good question, and one of the ways that we're approaching it too is that we also have two administrators, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing is we're working with the two administrators that we have to understand exactly what they see as the strengths and weaknesses for each of those department heads, and driving through our recommendations by working from the bottom up. And then we'll ultimately make a decision. One of the things that is interesting is that we've identified, as I mentioned before, police is our biggest cost savings driver. We've identified in the township alone 5 officers that are eligible for retirement with full medical benefits. So I think we're going to reach a lot of these by attrition. And I think you'll find that in a lot of municipalities because what you do is you tend to hold on to your municipal staff that are, good performing staff, and usually they're fully vested in their benefits. And I think that there's an opportunity to realize a lot of our staff reductions through attrition.
Interestingly, just along this line, Gary Passananti from Camden County has a database where one of the things that he's tracking is retirement eligibility for various department heads and senior officials throughout the county, so that they sort of know when people are likely to be retiring and leaving, so that towns can sort of discuss, 3 years from now, let's share their service after X retires. And this is, a part of this is the idea of phasing in. You don't have to achieve all your savings in the first year, but you can sort of phase some of this in through attrition and take advantage of the attrition that will logically occur. I'll come to Heather second, but go ahead.
Okay. So since taxpayers are so patient and forgiving of their elected officials, and it seems to me
For
one
the
of the
taxpayers
milestones that you're going to come to, whether you want to or not, is the new budget.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the more obvious comparisons people are going to make is, okay, now you have a single budget versus the previous two budgets from the previous years, and what is the estimated savings? And so do you have a handle on that or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, our personnel, basically there's three components of a municipal budget, essentially. You have your salary and wages, you have your operating budget, and you have your capital budget. Those are your three components. When I was talking about our $3.2 million in savings, that will come from our salary and wage area. The other two, the operating and the capital budgets, we have an opportunity to completely reinvent those two. And I think that's really where we're going to see some additional savings. In the operating budgets, I mentioned before, no longer are we going to need 2 municipal audits. We're not going to need all the same equipment. And I think that, using some type of zero-based budgeting model and on the operating side is going to be another savings driver for us. The other thing is that we didn't even really address it in the Consolidation Commission, but that capital budget is also very important because the capital budget is outside of your cap. That 2% cap that we're talking about, any type of, debt issuance that you provide for capital investment is outside of your municipal cap. So that's a big cost driver because it could potentially kick the can down the road for additional expenses for you. But what we have is the ability to better manage our real estate assets and improvements. We have 2 municipal buildings. We have shared properties. And I think moving forward, we've even talked as when we were separate communities of having a new teen center or completely renovating a school building and using that for nonprofits. Well, now we have this extra building that we can house some of our nonprofits in without having a taxpayer cost of renovating a building for $11 million. So I think that we have a lot of other opportunities that we haven't even looked at yet. And I think that we're going to be doing that in the years ahead as we address a lot of these capital issues.
And I buy all that, but
Yep.
my question really is, a lot of those things will take more time.
Of course.
But will it be obvious with the upcoming budget, you can't stop?
Yeah.
It's got a due date and it's going to come.
Yep.
Will it be obvious in the upcoming budget that there was a savings from the prior year? That's my question.
Yeah, well, I think, you had mentioned before about realizing the savings over time. The 3.2 is realized over a 3-year period. Our first year estimate is around $1.5 million, then it jumps to 2.5, and then it's 3.2 in the third year. So the thing is that we will see that reduction, that 1.5 in the first year, and in addition to that, we'll lay out the map so that we can hit the 3.2 further down the road. But as I had mentioned, the operating budgets. We have a transition task force. We also have a finance subcommittee. What they're working on is going line by line in the operating budgets to see where we have overlapping costs and to recommend an operating budget next year that is reduced.
That's great. It's an important milestone to get enthusiasm around the rest of the state.
And it's also sale of properties. A lot of towns, there can be some sale of properties, and that money can be utilized, like he said, to
or
refurb.
cost avoidance.
Yeah, cost avoidance. Wow, maintaining a building could be $30,000 or $40,000.
The $1.5 million. What percentage is that? What's the total budget over that 1-year period? So what percentage is that?
Well, that would probably be about 3% because $3.2 million is roughly 6% of our joint municipal budgets.
And one of the things here is they've already had a consolidated school district, so some of the towns that are coming forward, that would mean also consolidating their K through 8s as well as your municipalities, and then the savings is going to be even greater.
Yeah, over here.
My name is Jack Curtis, I'm a reporter, and I've heard with a lot of municipalities, and I've heard over the past few years how the cap is killing everybody. Most people in Trenton are driving us crazy, and the governor has got to do this and that, because we have to cut our budgets. And they've gone ahead and cut the budgets, including attrition, 20% in one city, in just the police department. So it's how do you get enough, less pushback at the state, and what do we have to do ourselves? And you talked about that. How do you get the person to say, this hurts, these taxes hurt, is there a solution? And somebody to bring that to their attention. How do I get the cities or the towns that I cover to somehow think about each other's problems, not just their own? So you can find somebody in that community, the larger community, not the individual ones, but the larger one, to stand up and say, we have a problem. We don't know what it is. And then how do you get somebody to lead that parade? I've understood to make change, you've got to have sufficient reason, pain, whatever you want to call it. And that you've got to find somebody to lead the parade to address that change. You have to have enough people to believe that they have the pain, and then who's going to lead the parade, and then how long is it going to take you to get there. So that's part of it. Now, as an example, there are two police departments who are working at shared services or consolidation, I don't know what. But I talked to both high officials in both departments, and they were each working to figure out what they should do. And I said, why don't you come together and determine what's the best police organization to handle the security, etc., for these two municipalities. That didn't go far. Except that the chief of one of the departments brought me a study, over 10 years old, that said it won't work. So there's this resistance. How do you first bring the catalytic force together and say, this is the nature of the pain, this is what's causing it, it's not just Trenton, okay? And how do we deal with it? This citizens-led committee, or whatever you would call it, Mr.
Well, one of the things before, you're talking about the commission, but what's interesting is when we go around the state and I say, I was asked, what are you going to do about my property taxes? And now I say, I go around the state and say, what are you going to do about your property taxes? What are you going to do? And it's like, because you have the law. You have the law. You can do this by yourself, and you need to work with your local officials as well. You're the ones that are paying for it. We're all taxpayers, even if you're an elected official. And so you have the power to do this. There's really nothing in your way. And that's basically what we go around and we tell the people. And there's leaders in all communities that do that, and leaders in your community.
Yeah, I think, when we talked before about, you can have pride in the services that are delivered in your community, but that doesn't mean that you should have a closed mind. And I think that, to your point, you have to have an open mind about sharing services, about municipal consolidation, and look to, initiate an effort to have that dialogue in your community. The thing is it's easy for that to be shot down in some cases by the elected officials, or in some cases by the New Jersey League of Municipalities, because they have their own conflict of interest. But the reality is that it's time for us to step up and say, look, we can do better. We don't have to keep this archaic municipal structure that we have. I mean, New Jersey has more municipalities than the entire state of California. It's crazy. And the problem is that because it's in place, it's very difficult to change it. And it means that you really have to, make a concerted effort to try to find ways and creative ways to make your voice heard and to utilize this new law. And, go to this seminar that Gina is having on March 28th, because the thing is it's important that we have more people get involved in this process, because we can do it. I mean, we showed that we could do it in Princeton, and let me tell you, if we could do it in Princeton, it can be done in other towns, because Princeton, everybody wants to get involved.
Just say a couple more. We have a couple more hands up quickly, and then we'll go ahead.
My question is, what is the role of all this for journalists? And I can, ask you as journalists, but this is a very partisan presentation. I'm not saying that as a citizen and taxpayer it's not all wonderful, but in general, the role of journalists is not to promote consolidation of townships, or should it be? So that's my question. I don't know how many people are journalists, but I was invited as a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we supposed to be taking away besides just sort of a brief on the issue?
My thing is a journalist who's been writing about this issue since at least 1998. One of the things is that most people people around the state are not aware that this is going on. That consolidation or shared services is a true option. That people around the state are looking at consolidating police departments. I think it is a proper role for a journalist to ask questions of public officials when we're talking about property tax issues or about municipal governance. Are you looking at this? Why are you not looking at this? Or what do you think makes sense? Or what are the obstacles? But the other thing is to have an understanding. I mean, you will be, whether you want to or not, you're going to be covering this story more. I mean, I mean, as I laid out in the New Jersey Spotlight article, Hunterdon County, Camden County, Somerset, and Bergen are all undergoing pretty serious studies of police consolidation or school consolidation. Mars has the GEM Commission. Gina's hosted seminars all over the state. Mercer County is where the Princetons are. There's a legislation in the State House, Assemblyman Chivukula's bill, and Senator Sweety's bill. One dealing with school districts, one dealing with municipalities. One of the most important things is to be aware that this is going on. And the other thing that I would, and this is my own, just as a journalist for a long time, I think it's important as a journalist to bring different options to people and to let your readers know that things are done differently in other states. In New Jersey, we focus only on the way it's always been done in New Jersey. One of the interesting things about the Hunterdon County School District proposal was that they looked at about a dozen county-based school districts around the country, all of which were very high-performing, all of which were about the size of Hunterdon County. Too often, as a journalist, I don't think we look outside the borders of what we specifically cover to what's going on elsewhere. And I think that that's something that is very important to do, and it's a way that you can bring value to your communities by raising other ideas and other options. Yeah. Two more, and then we'll.
Okay. Question for you. Do you have civil services in place with this consolidation?
Mm-hmm. We do. We do have.
Who's in charge of the hiring and firing for both municipalities, for both cities? Who's in charge of the hiring and the firing?
Well, we basically have, right now, you mean for the new, moving into the single municipality?
Who's going to retire? Yeah. So people got to hire more people.
Yeah.
There's some cost savings, but you need to replace some bodies.
Yeah.
So who's in charge of the hiring for both municipalities?
The way that we've structured it is the decision-making process is going to be done by a joint governing body. So what we've done is we actually have this task force that I had mentioned before established to make recommendations on the actual hiring and firing based on the structure of our departments, and then they will bring that to the joint governing bodies for approval. We actually have joint governing body meetings that we've scheduled every month from February all the way through July of this year, which will be a joy to see 12 elected officials up there. And we'll make our decisions and approve various different items related to consolidation.
Final two questions.
I don't want to be the
You get the last word.
I don't know.
Is your book available this evening?
My book is available this evening. I have a few. Wendy has some. It's also downloadable on our website.
Would
yes.
we get an announcement, or we're on the mailing list about the workshop?
I have the whole agenda here, so I can give it to you right now, and you can sign up. You can sign up on our website as well. So I have it right here.
Three-part question. Lastly,
good.
Is there any reason that you can see that while by two adjacent municipalities within the same county, where it would not make sense for them to consolidate?
That's interesting because New Jersey is so diverse. There isn't really one size fits all. Down in Long Beach Island, you could put 10 communities together and still get up to like 4 miles. In Hunterdon County, you have 128,000 residents in 435 square miles. Bergen County has 70 municipalities in its county. And so it really has to be organic. We feel at Courage to Connect New Jersey that at some point, especially if there's towns that are under 10,000, that it would make sense to have multi-towns combined, that the efficiencies would be much greater. And if you're going to go through this tumultuous process, that at the end of it you really want to have significant savings. So there could be 4 or 5 towns coming together perhaps. You might say, wow, that sounds ridiculous, but there's plenty of regional high school districts in New Jersey that have 5 or more towns in them already. So we don't pass judgment. What we are is we're a resource. If you want to initiate this in your town, we assist you. Whether you are a local official or whether you're a citizen, we're here as a resource. We really feel that our power is not advocating which towns should merge with each other, but you have to get a citizenry in another town to come together with you.
And a last question. You get the last question after all.
My name is Bernice Krozik. I live in Berkeley Heights, and I work for CWA Local 1032. And it's not that I don't think it's necessary to do something about the number of towns that we have. I think it's very inefficient. But I think it's also a fact that the real cost to the taxpayer is the school and the cost of education. And this is going to be addressing a small portion of the budget, the savings you're going to be making. No one's going to see their taxes go way, way down. I think it's necessary to look at this issue. But the real issue, I think, is really how the schools are funded. And that really, I think, for people who want to talk about trying to do something about reducing the tax burden, should really see that the comparison from one state to another state as to how much money the states give for how they fund is totally different. So when you're comparing one state to another, that's really one of the bigger issues.
100 is certainly looking at school consolidation. If you take a look at your tax bill, municipal taxes average about 30% of the tax bill, though, which is a significant amount.
So 30%, the other 70, though, right?
Don't forget,
counties
in there too.
Schools, the schools are about 55%, and counties are about 15%. So I mean, there are certainly. I don't think that there's any focus strictly on a municipal consolidation. One of the things we talked about earlier was that certainly going to a regional high school districts, regional districts that run schools makes a lot of sense, and that's a very logical place to go. Any last word from the panel before we release everyone?
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
question.
Thank you all very much.